Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Ganaganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Ganaganatam Praptasya Kalyanam Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Praptasya Kalyanam Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nritya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Tana Nritya Gita Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanadu Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Truptan Kritaiva Truptem Vajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Shiradikama Dabayarapara Madhura Lila Gunarupanam Madhura Lila Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Yayali Vir Juktir Apekshaniya Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Yayali Vir Juktir Tatrati Dakshar Ativalavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastatthava Vyata eva sarve Kintu pravarja priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Yasya prasada Bhagavar prasadam Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Yasya prasadam Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Dayam stubam tasya yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Dayam stubam Vande Gurashi Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Daya karo Sitapati Advaita Gosangi Tava Krupa Bhale Pai Chaitanya Nita Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosangi Tava Kripa Bhale Pai Chaitanya Nita Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Advaita Gosai Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosangi Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nita Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosangi Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nita Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Jadavaye Madhavaye Kesavaye Namah Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Jai Advaita Gosai Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna श्रीजीव गोपाल भट्ट दशर गुण Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Hari, Gora Pramanandi Haribo. Jai Om Vishnu Para Paramansa Prabhajakacha, Suttara Sarashisha Marjivani Grace. अभयचरविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन प्रतिष्ठा विभूति संस्थापकाचार्य वैष्णव शिरोमणि पतित पावन श्रील प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय। श्री गौरिया गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास गुण सद्गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। अनंत कुर वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त विंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय अद्वैताचार्य गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। श्री अद्वैताचार्य विभाव तिथि महोत्सव की जय। परम करुणा वैष्णव शिरोमणि कलियुग पावन श्री अद्वैताचार्य प्रभु की जय। प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरण अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमदान हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमदान हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र युग धर्म की जय। बृहदांग ट्रांसनेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। The Lordship श्री राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुणा श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर सिंगरे भगवान की जय। जय गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर हरि परमानंद हरि बोल। All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories, glories to Shri Guru Shri Gauranga Hari Bol.
नमस्ते नरसिंहाय। नमस्ते नरसिंहाय। प्रह्लाददायिने हिरण्यकाशीपूर्वक्षः शीलटङ्कानखालाये इतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंह बहिर्नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह नरसिंहमादिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरे नखम् अद्भुतशृङ्गं दलिता हिरण्यकशिपू तनुभृङ्गम् केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। निताई गौर हरि प्रेमानंदे। श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाय Krishna Bhakti Pradipati Satavadaya Vrindai Tulasi Devaya Krishna Bhakti Pradipati Satavadaya Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Sutta Vishnu Bhakti Pradipati Satavadaya
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी।
जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूरन हो
जय तुम्हारा शरण लो सर्वंच पूर्ण।
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी
कृपा करो वृंदावन।
मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास
मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो।
नयने हरि वो सदा जुगल रूपरासी ए निवेदाना धारो साखीर अनुगाता कोरो सेवा अधिकारा दिए कोरो निज दासी दीना कृष्णा दासे कोए ए जीना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी
Jaya
नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Vrindaye Tulasi Devaye Priyaye Kesava Sandha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. I desire to return to service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Overtake shelter of years wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan. That's within my vision. I will always be wholly beautiful. That comes Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kaladayan Joseph. Please give me the privilege to service. Make me honored servant. His very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing in love of Shri Radha. Oh, Shri Tulsi Maharani. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nam Namakari Bogdha Nija Sarva Shakti Tatra Pittani Amita Smarani Nathana Jadi Sitava Dupaya Bhagavan Vana Durdhaiva Midrishamya Anuragaha Trinadapi Sinichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amani Namanadina Kirtaniya Sada Hari Dhanam na Janam na Sundarim Kavitam Vaja Karishakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahituki Tvai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Paritamam Visame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tapapada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintayo Nayanam Galora Shudaraya Vadanam Gadagarudaya Gira Ulakaya Jitam Bapukada Tavanam Agrahane Bhavishyati Juga Itam Nimishena Chakrusha Pravrusa Itam Shanya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahe Nami Asli Shababa Vidada Tulam Pato Mat Prana Tastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shekhyastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradaiti Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Gaura Tishi Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart, all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life for the period of birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large. God spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not hard and fast rules for chanting these names, O my Lord. Out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I am so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I fall in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs on my body stand on end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and you should remain so. Even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, which is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Shikhyastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods like Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature and pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity, Karma Kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy name, to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls.
Swayam Prabhakaramayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Sahajamanam Shri Guru Vaishnava Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagunam Kulukam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Radha Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Muktavaraya Satsad Murtaye Vipralambara Sambhave Jayate Namaha Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Shri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasana Sito Shimad Radha Kundevo Prestali Bihi Sevyamanam Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Statastita Karshan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Kurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Satani Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakadasat Masakalpa Vriksha Laksa Vritesu Surabir Abhipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Prananto Ravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Trivanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angyani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadvijvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragam Yo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalamanantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayanabhusa Suktaryameva Nikama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabirya Eva Nicharupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatista Nanavatar Makarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Nishkalamanantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Vishay Veda Vitayamanam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Pratifulam Smaratam Upetya Leelaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nichitamni Tale Chitasya Devi Mahesu Adhirama Sutesu Tesu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vitascha Yena Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shististati Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chatestate Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Naitatar Priktadasti Etu Yasam Bhutam Apitatasam Apaitikar Yad Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Departed Evita Santaramabhyapetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samana Dharma Yastadra Geva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakar Nanarda Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Mananta Jagaranda Saroma Kuba Adhara Saktim Avalamya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisrasitakala Matavalambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagananda Nata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalaviseso Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Baswanya Tasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitat Vatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dvande Pranama Samaye Sakanadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganama Mambu Maruti Sascha Kalastatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Vishanti Yamcha Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschaksuresa Savita Sakala Grahana Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichayasrutayasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Deyashta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahaswakarma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaurava Sevyamanam Sanchintyatasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriyakan Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumischintamani Ganamaitoyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitad Aswadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradibhi Shavati Surabhyabhyascha Sumaha Nimesa Dakyo Vavrajati Nahiyatra Pisamaya Bhajay Sveta Dvitam Tamaham Iha Glogulam Itiham Idvidantaste Santakshiti Virachara Katipaya Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha and Adiraja Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, verse number 46. Yat utaham Tvaya Pristo Vairajat Purushad Idam Yatasit Tad Upakyaste Prasnan Anyams Chakrits Nasa Yet what Uta is, however, aham, I, tvaya, by you, prista, I am asked, vairajat, from the universal form, purusat, from the personality of Godhead, idam, this world, yata, as it, asit, was, tat, that, upakyasate. I shall explain. Prasnan, all the questions. Anya, others. Cha, as well as. Krishna Saha, in the great detail. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O King, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. Purport. by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this great transcendental literature is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. And therefore, all questions that can be humanly possible regarding the universal affairs, beginning from its creation, are all answered in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The answers depend only on the qualification of the person who explains them. The 10 divisions of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained by the great speaker Srila Sukadeva Goswami, are the limitation of all questions, and intelligent persons will derive all intellectual benefits from them by proper utilization. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the second canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O King, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the personality Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. Now, although this is a short purport, Prabhupada says something that's very interesting. He says, the answers to all these questions of Maharaj Parikshit depend only on the qualification of the person who explains them. So, the person who is explaining is Sukadeva Goswami, and he is a completely liberated soul. And although he had strong Mayavad tendencies, or not Mayavad, but impersonalist tendencies, when he heard the 4 nutshell verses from his father, who heard it from Narada, who heard it from Brahma, who heard it from Krishna, he gave up his impersonalist tendency and took up wholeheartedly expanding this transcendental knowledge given originally by Krishna into the full-fledged Srimad Bhagavatam in 18,000 verses. He's the one that really expanded it. And therefore, he is top authority in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's going to explain the 10 aspects or characteristics of, or what's called Dasa Mula, the 10 fundamental themes, or the 10 answers, 10 questions and answers of Maharaj Parikshit. So, but before we go into that, which is the next chapter, chapter 10, I said yesterday that we would go over what are the laws of material nature. This is an extremely important question to understand this, because unless we understand the laws of material nature, out of ignorance, we're going to violate them. And nature is blind. If someone violates the laws of material nature, nature has no mercy. But, in a sense, everything is under the control of Krishna, who does have mercy. So first of all, Prabhupada makes clear that the laws of nature means the laws of God, or Dharma. The laws of nature means the laws of God, or Dharma. So in a lecture in the Bhagavad Gita 4.8 in Montreal, June 14th, 1968, Prabhupada says, there is no difference between laws of nature and laws of God. Laws of nature mean laws of God. Dharmam tu shakshat bhagavat pranitam. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.19. In other words, only God can prescribe or give Dharma. And what is Dharma? Prescribed occupational duties that all living and all human beings have to follow. the animals don't have to follow the principles of Dharma because they are completely controlled by instinct, which is the Paramatma in the heart of the animal. So animals are following the laws of nature. They're forced to. Human beings have some limited freedom. They can choose to follow or they can choose not to follow. Therefore, human beings have a lot more responsibility than animals. Animals are forced to follow. Human beings are forced to act in the material world, but at any point they can decide not to be whimsical and to follow Krishna's advice. At that point, it's possible for them to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death and the laws of material nature. And Prabhupada says that the human form is very special. Even the demigods desire to have a human form. They have human-like forms, but they're much superior to us. But even they or aspire to have the human form. Why? Well, the ones that are more enlightened. Why? Because it's easier to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Now, why is it easier? Because in the hellish planets, most of the time people are suffering. In fact, almost all the time. In the middle planets, like the Earth, where we are, it's mixed. There's some happiness and some suffering. The suffering reminds us that we're not independent and that there's definitely some other goal than simply sense gratification. Right? On the heavenly planets, there's mostly happiness and there's also some suffering. So it's harder to get free of the influence of the modes of material nature and sense gratification on the heavenly planets than it is on the Earth. Because in Earth it's mixed. Well, mostly depends on one's karma, but it's like a 50-50 mix. But sometimes it's more severe than that, sometimes it's less severe than that, but it's mixed. In the heavenly planets, it's predominantly happiness, material happiness, that is, and some suffering, but it's not as severe as in the material world, in the middle planets. So therefore, it's easier to get free of Maya and illusion on the middle planets if we follow Krishna's instructions. It's a little it's harder on the heavenly planets because there's so much material happiness there. So Prabhupada explains that the Dharma are laws that Krishna has given for the occupational duties of the living entities. And any infraction or any deviance from this immediately results in suffering and very strict laws. And he says, therefore, Bhagavata says that religious principle cannot be manufactured by any human being. It is the law of God. Therefore, one has to obey. One cannot disobey. Law of nature, you cannot disobey. It will be enforced upon you. Just like the law of nature, the winter season comes. You can't stop it. You can't change that. You can do whatever you want, but you're not going to change the summer, the fall, the winter, and the spring. They're going to come regardless of what you do. Right? They might come a little bit earlier or a little bit later, but they're going to come and they're going to go. Right? So it's a law of nature. And then birth, death, old age, and disease, there's no way you're going to stop that. You might try, but it's not going to stop. Or we might try, it's not going to stop. And then the rotation of the earth on its axis, the rotation of the earth around the sun, and the sun's rotation around the universal axis. You're not going to stop any of that. You have no control at all over that. And the miseries of this body, miseries caused by other bodies, miseries caused by universal cataclysmic events. I'm not going to stop that. The influence of the modes of material nature, well, there's a possibility of stopping it if we follow Krishna's advice, but if we don't, you can't stop that. So all these things are unstoppable because they're laws. Okay? So Prabhupada says, again, the law of nature, the laws of God. The sun rises from the east side and settles on the west side. You cannot change it. You cannot change anything. You know, that you have to understand how the laws of nature are going on. That is Krishna consciousness, to understand the laws of nature, because they're laws of God, because they are dharma, the absolutely necessary occupational duties and responsibilities of a human being. That is Krishna consciousness, to understand the laws of nature. And as soon as we speak of laws of nature, we must accept that there is a lawmaker. Laws of nature cannot develop automatically. There must be some authority on the background. Bhagavad Gita therefore says in the 9th chapter, Maya dakshena pakriti suyate sa characharam hitananena konteya jagat viparivartate. So this is a very important verse. Prabhupada quotes it many, many times. He's lectured on it also many, many times. 9th chapter, verse number 10. And it says that Maya dakshena pakriti says this material nature. When he says nature, the material nature, he says prakriti. Prakriti is what is controlled by the Lord. And he controls the living entities, he controls material nature, he controls the modes of material nature, he controls everything. Right? So it says, the material nature, which is one of my energies, so Krishna has multiple energies, many, many energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So that's another law of nature, that there will be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you can't change it. You can try, but you can't change it. And in a purport, Prabhupada says, it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all activities of the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Will and the background of this material manifestation, but the management is being conducted by the material nature. Okay, so when it says the management, the day-to-day management, just like when you have a non-profit organization, you have what's called the directors, and you also have what's called the officers. Now, the directors are the persons who don't own the non-profit corporation, but are the ultimate managers. But they delegate to the officers the day-to-day management. Now, sometimes the directors and the officers can be the same person, but normally they're not. You have a certain number of directors who are the ultimate decision makers, but they don't own the corporation. A corporation is not owned by anyone. Oh, it's owned in the sense, or managed in a sense, by the directors, but no individual director or officer can benefit from it. They can get a salary for doing specific duties, but they cannot profit from it. So, in the same way, the ultimate director of the whole material creation is Krishna himself. But he delegates the responsibility of the day-to-day functioning to the officers, and they are the demigods. And they're part of material nature, just like you and I are also part of the material nature right now, because we find that, well, because our body is material, our soul is not material, but our body is material, and it's being controlled by the modes of material nature. And the demigods have control of the modes of material nature to a very big degree, and therefore you have mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So, to Lord Vishnu, in mode of goodness, maintains, and Lord Brahma, in the mode of passion, creates, and Lord Shiva, in the mode of ignorance, destroys. So these things are controlled. And then you have the subordinate demigods, that some of them take care of the currents of water, some take care of the wind, some take care of the earth or different planets and so forth. So all those people are part or in the material nature, and the material nature is completely controlled by Krishna, and it is one of his energies, the apara prakriti, and another energy is the para prakriti, the spiritual energy, and apara prakriti is the material energy, and the jivas, you and me, we are the tatastha. We're in a marginal position. Okay, so we can go either way, either toward Maya or toward Krishna. So it says, it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all activities in the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Will and the background of this material manifestation, but the management is being conducted by the material nature. Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. The Father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species, according to their last desires and activities in their previous life. All these living entities, and Prabhupada makes the point often, no one can say when they fell down from the spiritual world, but it's in antiquity. It's so far back you can't really figure it out. Krishna knows, but we will never really be able to understand when and how we fell down. But the general reason why we fell down is because we became envious of Krishna. Okay? All of us. That's why we have so much problems in this world. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over the material nature. Material nature is thus activated, and everything is created immediately. That's a very important point. Everything is created immediately. This is in stark contradiction of Darwin and the archaeologists, because they think everything came about by a very, very gradual process over billions and billions of years, and without any person in charge. Happened by accident, and it's going on by randomly. This is complete nonsense, right? Because everything they do is not random and it's not accidental. So you don't build a skyscraper accidentally, and the materials don't build themselves into a skyscraper, right? I mean, it's ridiculous to even think such a thing. But yet, such people as Einstein and many, many other so-called big, like you have all these different modern physicists and mathematicians and nuclear scientists, and all, they all think they all say the same thing. Well, there's a big bang and it expanded, and then because of gravity, because of this, because of that, it all came together, and life became manifest. It's nonsense. There's no proof of that. If that's a fact, we would be able to see it going on today, and we don't see it at all going on today. So Prabhupada finishes, he says, this example is given in the Smriti. When there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person, yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There is a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains. Well, he's giving orders to the demigods and others, and to us also. In summary, material nature, without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot do anything. Yet the Supreme Personality is detached from all material activities. Now, this is impossible for the scientists to understand. And why is it impossible? They're certainly intelligent people, because they're envious of Krishna. Therefore, they'll never be able to understand this simple English here that is explaining one of the most profound concepts in the human history, that God is controlling everything, but yet he's aloof at the same time. So to imagine that someone can be aloof and at the same time control everything is mutually contradictory. Therefore, scientists say, well, this is not logical, therefore we don't accept it. Well, what they're saying really is, look, because we can't do this, we're not going to accept that somebody else can do it. That's what they're saying, right? And that's because of their enviousness of Krishna. They can't accept that someone has so much power, right? And that is a difference between all these speculators and scientists and devotees. The devotees understand a simple thing. Krishna has all powers. He can do anything he wants, and whatever he does, there's no sinfulness involved in it. Even though it may, if we do it, it might be sinful, but if he does it, it's not sinful, because he has absolute power. He can turn matter into spirit, he can turn spirit into matter. He can do whatever he wants, right? But we can't do that. And if we try to do that, we violate the laws of material nature and we're punished right away. Someone said, well, I can dance with the gopis too. I'll find some gopis here in a bar or something and do the same thing as Krishna. No, right away you're going to be punished. Okay, so then it continues that as soon as we speak of laws of nature, we must accept that there is a lawmaker. Laws of nature cannot develop automatically. There must be some authority on the background. Bhagavad Gita therefore says in the 9th chapter that Maya Dakshina Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam, Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Krishna says, under my direction or superintendence, the material laws are working. Now in the lecture of Prabhupada on the Srimad Bhagavatam 6.1.19 in Honolulu, May 19, 1976, he's again speaking about the laws of nature, which means the laws of God. And he says, Ishatantra, by the laws of nature or laws of God. Laws of nature means laws of God. They accept by nature, but they do not know who is behind this nature. They accept that there is nature and there are laws of nature, but they, meaning the junk scientists, philosophers, they don't know who is behind this nature. That is intelligence, to understand who's actually behind this nature. Nature is dead matter. It cannot form itself. It cannot organize itself. Just like this microphone. This is matter, material. It is. There might be some iron, some other thing, some wood, something else. But this iron, wood, or iron plastic combination, like if I look at this, parts of it are metallic and maybe some parts are not metallic, right? So there is life behind this iron and wood, and he has manufactured. Therefore it is working. But these rascals, they're thinking that the combination of this iron and wood and iron and something else, it has become microphone. No, it is a machine, but machine is manipulated and manufactured by a living being. Right? Not that automatically the iron and other ingredients or other products becomes a machine by itself. No. So these rascals, they cannot understand that. The nature is working, that's all right, but how it is working, what is the background, they do not know. That answer is in the Bhagavad Gita. Maya Dakshena Prakriti, Suyate Sachirachana, Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Under my superintendence, it is working. Krishna says. That's a fact. You might have manufactured a very big machine that is all manufactured by some light. Okay, so in other words, all the energy in the material world is coming from the sun. And the sun, light, is coming from the Brahma Jyoti, the spirit, light in the spiritual world. And that light is coming originally from Krishna. And light has two main qualities. It's heat and light, right? Or the sun has heat and light. So everything is done, like if you have a factory, so they make steel. What's going on in the factory? They have these big, big furnaces that melts different metals, and then they mix them together, and then they coagulate, and it becomes a steel girder or a steel this or something else. So steel is a mixture of iron and other metals. And the same way, they have different mixtures and different types of metals and for different types of manufacturing needs. So you need fire to do that, right? When you cook, you need fire, right? When you heat things up, they blend easier, right? So all the different recipes for cooking, many of them require fire, right? So that fire and light also. So if there's absolute darkness, how would you be able to mix things? How would you be able to even see things? You wouldn't be able to see if there's absolute darkness. So there has to be light and there has to be fire to do work. Right? Without those two things, we wouldn't be able to do anything. Right? And all that light is being supplied by the sun. Therefore, Prabhupada says here, it says, the nature is working, that's all right, but how it is working, what is the background, they do not know. The answer is in the Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dakshina Prakriti Sute Satcharacharam, Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Under my superintendence, it is working, nature is working, Krishna says. That is a fact. You might have manufactured a very big machine. That is all manufactured by light. Ultimately, it's the sunlight that's providing the heat and light to do work in the universe and to sustain life. Not that the iron and wood has come together, a skyscraper building. The bricks have come together, all together automatically, they say, by chance. What is this nonsense? By chance these bricks have come and piled and become rooms? Just see. These things are going on, all rascals. Therefore, andayatander upaniya manas tepis. So there's this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.31. It says, Nate vidu swartakatim hivishnum durasaya bayartamanina yandayatandar upaniya mana tepis tantriyam Uradam Nibada. It says, persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life, and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects, cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. as blind men guided by other blind men miss the right path and fall into a ditch. Materially attached men, led by another materially attached man, are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and therefore continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. This is an amazing verse. It's an amazing verse. And that second part, Andayatandayat Upaniyamana Tepisu Tantrium Udam Nibadha. So, a blind man following other blind men, or a blind man leading other blind men, what happens? They all fall into a ditch. So, materially attached men, led by another materially attached man, are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and therefore continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. So, all the followers of Biden, all the followers of Trump, all the followers of Putin, all the followers of Zelensky, I think that's his name, in Ukraine, they're all blind men, and they're leading other blind men, and they're all going to fall in the ditch called war and pestilence, and all these things are happening because people are violating the principles of Dharma, or the laws of nature, or the laws of God. And immediately they're getting reactions. So, therefore it says, in the lecture on the 6th canto, 1st chapter, 68th verse, in Vrindavan on September 4th, 1975, Prabhupada says, so we cannot violate the laws of God or Dharma. Then we'll be punished. The punishment is there, awaiting, by the laws of nature. Daivihi esu gunamayi mamavaya duratyaya mameviye prapadyante nayamita tarantite. Bhagavad Gita 7.14. The laws of nature are will punish you. So long you are not Krishna conscious, the laws of nature will go on punishing you. Three kinds of miserable conditions: adhyatmika, adhibodhika, adhidaivika. This is the law. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa hankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. So this is the 3rd chapter and 27th verse or 28th verse. Okay, let's just see where that is. The chapter. It's 27th verse. 327. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of nature, of material nature. And the purport Prabhupada says, two persons, one is Krishna conscious, one in Krishna consciousness, and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his ignorance. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature, under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Hrishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he, the living entity, is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. This is our situation. And it's a very dangerous situation because when you act in ignorance, you make gigantic mistakes. Just like there was this one devotee, his wife had cancer. So he was reading that if you get apricot pits and break them up, apricot seeds, right? When you eat the apricot, there's a seed. You crack the seed and you take the pit out, and then you make something with the pit, or you just take it directly, right? It can cure cancer. So he went and bought some apricots, right? And then he got the pits. Then he cracked the pit, and he got the seeds, and then he cracked the seeds and took out the pits. And I don't know what he did with that. I think he blended it or something. And he gave it to his wife. And as soon as she took it, in a very short time, he had to rush her to the hospital to pump out her stomach before she died of poisoning. So he did that to heal his wife so she could live longer, but actually, because he did it in ignorance, he almost killed his wife. You know, and when I talked to him, I said, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Well, I thought it would help her." Well, I said, but you have to understand that seeds, the pit of seeds, are very powerful. All the pits of the seeds, but especially the apricot pit, very, very powerful. Why is it a medicine? Because it's a poison. But if you dose, or if you know how to give very incremental amounts of that poison to a person, it doesn't kill them. It kills the disease. But if you overdo it, you can kill the person. And see, that's the problem with most of these vaccines. They have poisonous things in them. Now, if they make a mistake and overdose you, you can die from the same vaccine or get very sick. And that happens a lot. A lot of people are getting sick because, they're giving hundreds and millions of vaccines, right, for COVID, let's say. Hundreds and millions. Now, all you have to do is have one part of those vaccines where the machine made a mistake, or the person who was running the machine made a mistake, and the dosage is way over what it should be. It's way beyond the threshold of safe, right? And they don't realize it because everything's going real fast, right? To make millions of vaccines, it has to go very fast. They have these automatic machines. All you have to do is make a little mistake on one batch. The people that get that batch, they can either get very sick or they can die. Why? Because they're putting it directly into the veins, which means it goes directly through to the heart and the brain, right? And it can be very fast. The reaction can be very fast, right? So that's why these things are very dangerous, because they are mass produced. It's not like one doctor in his little laboratory is making a small batch and is being very careful. They're doing it in his big industrial laboratories, and they're making millions. And all they have to do is make a little mistake in a batch, and anyone that gets that batch, and they have to label it and everything, the date and all that stuff is there, so they can identify which one killed a person or got the people sick, right? And sometimes there are companies that cheat on the batch and the date and all these things, Anyway, you see how dangerous it can be putting a needle into your vein and injecting something in it that'll go in a matter of minutes to your heart and your brain. It's very dangerous. So Prabhupada continues. He said, what time is it now? 7:10. Okay, so he says, the punishment is there, awaiting by the laws of nature. Daivi esa gunamai, mamamaya durataya. You cannot defeat or control or change the laws of nature. And they are very severe, right? So that's the 7th chapter, 14th verse. The laws of nature are there to punish you. So long you are not Krishna conscious, the laws of nature will go on punishing you. 3 kinds of miserable conditions: adhyatmika, adhibodhika, adhidaivika. This is the law. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai sarva karmani sarvasaha. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. You are thinking you are independent, but that is not the fact. We are dependent, completely dependent on the laws of nature. And laws of nature means laws of God. What is this Prakriti? Prakriti is acting under the direction of Krishna. So Prakriti is what is controlled by Krishna. So what is controlled by Krishna? The entire material nature and all living entities. That's a fact. But the scientists, the philosophers, the speculators, they reject that fact, not because of knowledge, because of envy. They can see it. They can see the nature is organized. Who organized it? Nobody organized it because they're envious. If they were not envious, they would say, wait a minute, look, everything we do is intelligence driven by human beings. So, and then we're seeing there's a whole universe out there that's completely organized. And that's why we can have science, because if everything was chaotic, it'd be impossible to have science. You would not be able to have any science if everything was chaotic. You would not be able to predict anything. You would not be able to have a theory because everything is chaotic and random. But it's not. It's all organized out there, right? And in here. So therefore, there's got to be someone behind it. There's got to be an intelligence behind it. Just like there's intelligence behind Microsoft, there's intelligence behind Amazon, there's intelligence behind Oracle. Then why did they say there's no intelligence behind the universe? It's crazy. It's only because of envy. That's what's stopping them from acknowledging it. So, Prakriti, what is controlled by Krishna, is acting under the direction of Krishna. Just like a police constable is working under the direction of a magistrate or superior officer. Similarly, Prakriti is giving us various types of miserable conditions of life directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That one point Einstein rejected. He said, I don't believe that there's a God who punishes and rewards people. He says, I don't believe it. Well, so what you don't believe it? But we see it happening all the time. All the time some people are being rewarded and some people are being punished. Okay, so we'll finish this. And what is the law? What are the laws of nature? That is, that in the human form of life, if you do not endeavor to understand what is God, what you are, what is your relationship with God, what is your duty in life, these things, if you do not learn, then you are punishable immediately. There it is. And that's why there's so much suffering in this world. Okay, we'll stop right there. It's good to know the laws of material nature. Now we didn't go through a list of all those laws. We just did a few. Tomorrow I'll go through an exhaustive list of exactly what these laws are. And it's in the second part of the booklet that I have, the laws of nature. They are all things that happen to you in Narak. All the different types of punishment for all different types of sinful activities. And so it's pretty complicated. So are there any questions? Yeah, this book. The laws of nature. So the second part is all about, what does it say? Bad karma. Bad karma. One time I was in New York. I went to this customs agent to get some merchandise I received from India. And his name was Monte, right? So I was looking at Monte where he was looking up the references of the products I was importing to see if there's tariffs or no tariffs on them. And then, he kept sort of like burping and breathing difficult. And I said, hey, Monte, I said, "Are you sick?" He said, "Yeah, man. I ate some bad pork." Well, yeah, if you eat pigs, obviously you're going to get sick, right? And so you see how due to ignorance, people suffer unnecessarily, because they're violating the laws of nature. Okay, so no questions, no answers, and now we'll stop. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. See, every day we learn something new. Very interesting. How is it possible? Because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Obviously, there's no end to the knowledge about Krishna. Hari Bol. Want to chant?
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bandha Muhi Savadhana Mate
Bandha Muhi Savadhana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Koriya Aikya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati
Je prasade pure sarva asha
Ye prasade pure sarva sa
Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme prabhu se
Chakshudan dila jai janme janme prabhu se
Divya gyan hirde prakashido
Divya gyan hirde prakasito
Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasha jaite वेदे गाए जहाँ रचरितो
Vedigaya Janara Charito
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
Lokenath Lokera Jivana
Lokenath Lokera Jivana
Ha ha Prabhu Karo Daya Deho More Pad Chaya
Ha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Pada Chaya
Ebe Jas Gushuk Tribhuvana
Ebeas Kusakti Bhuvana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashata Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Bhaskatya Desatarine
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Rama
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajakacha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Chikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samavita Bhaktivinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanand. All glories to assembled Lord, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled Lord, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati Deva Gurvani Kuchari Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatari. Krishna 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 Hare Rama. The lotus feet of our spiritual masters, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotion. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor. By his grace, I can cross the ocean of pure suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and Master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan, Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi, Haribo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna.